Your ass better call somebody.
It's me. It's that B-I-G-T. And I'm rolling once again with that H-O-O-P. All right, it is time once again for another edition of the Print Factory. Special edition this time, actually. Hoop's not here. He bailed out on me. I don't know what he's doing. He's freaking cleaning the house or something for Thanksgiving like only Hoop can do. But I might have even raised the stakes a little here because we got two absolute legends in here with me, CSURAM and Wilson, the Wilson GOAT. So we're stepping up to the plate here for a little Thanksgiving Print Factory here where we're going to talk about the 3 games tomorrow, obviously. And the big news all week has been this lineup sharing deal where if you're on Twitter at all, if you're in the DFS industry at all, you've probably seen stuff going back and forth between a lot of people. And we're going to dive into that. But, guys, what's going on? Pete, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Hoping the Heat can make a little bit of a comeback here, but thrilled to be on here with Finney, Wilson GOAT. The guy's an all-time legend. Excited to chat with you boys about Thanksgiving.
Wilson, what's up, man?
Well, you guys called me out of the bullpen. I'm at my mom's house right now, big family get together. We kind of start the festivities on Wednesday night, and I'm good. I'm real good, actually.
We haven't talked since the old Game of Thrones. I mean, it's been a while since the Game of Thrones we were doing on here.
Yeah, we had a fun NBA playoffs and Game of Thrones season. That was a really fun 2 months.
Profitable too. I mean, every time I see this guy give a winner on Twitter, like randomly it'll be like a Friday night at like 9 p.m. and I'll just see like, we're going to take freaking Utah State or who was the team the one night? You threw some just random team out there that I just blasted and it was just, they were up like 35-7 at halftime. I mean, this guy hasn't picked a loser since like 97, Pete.
I mean, Wilson GOAT. That's what we call him. The guy's all time. There's a lot of gems out there, and hopefully we can get some of these Thanksgiving games right. We got some news, but we'll dive into those games in a little bit. I definitely want to hit on this lineup sharing topic.
So let's just dive right into it. Just those of you that don't know what's been going on, the last couple of weeks, first of all season in NFL, NBA, the pricing has been pretty bad in my opinion to where people that play, first of all, I should clarify too, I'm not a cash player. Pete and Wilson, these guys are cash game legends. I can give insight from someone that's not even involved in the situation, even remotely. Like I'm not involved in it, but I've been firing some bullets a little bit in there because it just doesn't make sense to me. But basically, getting to the point of it, there's people out there upset, including Jeff Mans of Guru Elite, that has a pretty big voice in the industry too, a big following, does the XM radio, the fantasy, similar to what we do at RotoGrinders, but he has a big name in the industry and a big following, and he's getting all these people riled up talking about lineup sharing. I might add the quote too that he had in here. We might add it in afterwards, but basically saying that there's 30 or 40 people pooling lineups and splitting their money and doing crap like that, and it's just not even remotely true. But let me get CSU's opinion. Like I said, he's a huge cash game player. Both these guys are. Let's get his opinion on it. Pete, what's up?
Yeah, I think it's been a hot topic for the industry for a long time. And this week on FanDuel, there's a team that was just super popular across all cash game formats. If you're looking at projections at some of the most popular sites out there, RotoGrinders, Fantasy Labs, Daily Roto, wherever, Fantasy Crunch, where you're getting projections, a lot of them were pointing to, a specific type of build. And of course, on Sunday, a huge percentage of lineups and cash games, from a lot of different people, was this one team. I had a 1v1 off of it. I chose Kareem Hunt over, Miles Sanders, but the team just, that was my optimal team. And, obviously, it's awful for if you're playing that team in like 3-mans, 5-mans. It's clearly negative EV to be having that team in that format or tournaments. And that was the case. Like this same lineup that everyone's so upset about in 50-50s, like a lot of people just had that in tournaments as well, which is great if you're competing against that. And Jeff went really into this. I went on his radio show. I was happy that you had me on so we could talk about it. I think Jeff is genuinely confused about how obvious of a lineup this was to, like, especially the cash game players now. I mean, in 2019, we're here where, players have gotten so much better collectively. We've seen that in all formats, but especially cash games now, like, those games are tougher than they've ever been. So the people who have survived and are playing them, of course, are going to have a similar process. So I think that's the big confusion for Jeff, is specifically on this last week. But the whole situation is a nuanced one that's a big challenge. And the hypocritical thing to me is, Jeff is a big content provider and he's giving out a ton of different picks and they're talking about the best plays. And I've seen Guru Elite people have the same lineups. And a lot of the guys of that 40 people too, like, clearly aren't working together, aren't talking. It's just random. Not even random. They had the same line because it was a clear lineup for a lot of people. So, I just think there's a lot of hypocrisy here. I think the, 40 people pooling money is just so far from the truth. And, there's a lot more, but I want to get Wilson Goat in here to add some commentary.
Just to clarify one more thing too before Wilson jumps in, like, a lot of these people too, which was getting me mad originally, were coming after, like, RotoGrinders. Like, there's RotoGrinders logos all over it and implying that RotoGrinders is somehow sending out this lineup to everyone and we're all pooling our money together, and it just literally couldn't be further from the truth. But Wilson, what do you got on this?
Yeah, I saw that tweet chain or whatever going around about the RotoGrinders syndicate, which I thought was really funny. I guess the problem that I have with this whole controversy is that immediately when people start accusing people of pooling their resources, colluding together, I see people that they accuse this of, and immediately I start looking at my history, my results, which I can go and check, and immediately I see that I'm playing high stakes 3-mans with the exact same people that they're accusing of colluding. And as a matter of fact, in the last couple of weeks, I've had some people reach out to me on private message on Twitter asking me, I wouldn't say they're even upset with me, but asking me if I'm in some sort of chat group or colluding with Hoop and NBA, because there has been twice in the last couple of weeks where we've ended up on the same cash lineup, and I just immediately linked them to both nights to 3-mans that both of us were in. Both nights we lost, and both nights we were playing, we were giving another player, basically 2-to-1 on their money because we had the same lineup. And obviously, if we were working together, we wouldn't be putting the same lineup in a $5,000 3-man. But not just that. I see it all the time with other high-stakes player. People accuse Empire Maker of colluding with this person and that person. And once again, I can just go look at my results and see them competing each other in 3-mans and 5-mans. I really don't think they would be entering those contests. That's insane. Now, I do realize that some people do work together. But I think the idea of people pooling their money in some sort of syndicate format or hedge fund format or whatever they're saying, you have to ask yourself what the upside of that is. And I can't really figure out what you get by doing that. I made a sarcastic tweet about how the DFS Godfather, his only requirement is that everyone has to put their lineup in the same contest. And if you really think about it, it just really, if you just kind of work through it, it doesn't make any sense that people would pool their money. I don't know. I don't understand why people just can't use a little more critical thinking and think through this. I don't know. Those are the thoughts that cross through my brain when I see this controversy. And obviously, I kind of take it from a sarcastic point of view because I don't worry about it and I don't really care that much about it. When I lose in DFS, which is all the time, I just tend to think it's because I'm stupid, not because someone else is cheating me. So, that's my thought process.
So my opinion, just from the outside, like I said, I clarified coming in, and that's why I think I can give an opinion on it, because I've never said I'm like the best player in the world. I've never considered myself that. These guys are way better than me. CSU, Wilson, Hoop, Empire, all these guys are the best cash players in the world. I'm not comparing myself to them at all. But it upsets me when there's just dumb things being thrown out there, like 40 people are playing the same. It just doesn't make any sense. These guys are not doing it. I know all these guys, and I just hate when there's stuff out there, especially from Mans, because like I said, I do respect his content side of things where he's built a huge base up. He has a huge following. I respect that. I really do. And I told him that. I don't respect him as a player that much. I don't think he doesn't even play anymore, but that's beside the point. It doesn't even matter in this case anyways. But when he just keeps piggybacking this story, it gets all of his people fired up, makes them think something's there that's not. And then all of a sudden you're like defending yourself for weeks when it shouldn't even be a story. Like, Jeff is smart enough to realize that this is just, it's not possible. Sure, there's 2, 3, even like 5-man groups that talk all day, make teams together, end up on the same team 90% of the time, whatever. That's a whole different story than 40. And that's not against the rules anyways. You should be talking with people about lineups. You should be working through stuff together. First of all, Pete, what do you think of this? Obviously, you've talked to tons of people in your time. Even way back, you used to talk to like Primetime or whatever his name was. You've talked to so many different people. You've been around the industry from the beginning. Like, what's the deal with just talking with small groups? How do you think that relates to this?
Yeah, I think it's a very nuanced thing, and certainly there's an optics challenge, which, like you mentioned about Jeff, he's definitely been in the industry for a long time, and anyone who's, tried to build up fantasy sports and daily fantasy, and obviously that's a good thing, and I really appreciated Jeff having me on the radio show, and being professional about that. But the problem I have with this whole situation is that he's spreading this narrative that people are being cheated, and it's, there's so, like, basically the way DFS has gone now, like, the content's gotten better, the tools have gotten better, the projections have gotten better. Everyone's using optimizers now, or the majority of people are doing it. So, there's tons of Slack channels. A lot of these really high-end content providers have, Discord chats, or, RotoGrinders has that, obviously, Slack chats, and people are talking lineups and plays all the time. So it's really hard to distinguish, what should be allowed, what shouldn't be allowed, what is a problem. The only thing I see from this that is interesting is the optics challenge. And I think the big issue with last week was the pricing on FanDuel. You look at DraftKings, a lot of the same players are in 50-50s. And there was no train of, 40 of the same lineups. There's a lot of diversified lineups because the pricing was tough and people had to make decisions. With the soft pricing, that's where people all land on that lineup. And I get the optics are bad for a lot of these new players, but that's just a challenge we're facing in DFS now. And I think one benefit of all this stuff is like talking with people about fantasy and having that community and building relationships. Like, some of my best friends have come from fantasy, like getting to talk with you boys. This is fun. So I think the camaraderie of like fantasy is definitely a good thing, but the nature of cash games and where things are going, yeah, people are getting on much, they're on similar combinations. I mean, I've seen this year, like plays in NBA. I mean, Finney, I'm sure you've seen it too. Like, Aaron Holiday's first game playing with like Brogdon out, or like some of these players that, would have been 30-40% in the past are now like 95% owned. Everyone's gotten so much better, and there's been a huge convergence in cash game for the plays. So, last comment, I think tournaments will continue to grow. I think that format is more enticing for the casual fan. I think, a lot of these optics problems aren't there, and cash games are just going to continue to get harder. But definitely want more insight from Finney.
Yeah, Wilson, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think Peter's right. I mean, when you think about sort of first of all, what are you saying about what Jeff said on the radio? And obviously, he had an opinion, and that's fine. But really, when you want to fan the flames of a controversy that's not real, I think that it's, a little bit reckless, just because the industry doesn't need, bad news just for no reason. But what I would just implore people to think about, just sort of from outside looking in, is that, this lineup sharing, even if it was true that 40 people are sharing lineups, which they're not, or some sort of syndicate, it's really not something to be fearful of. I guess you can run into a situation in 100-man double up where maybe it, maybe it causes a problem in that specific situation. But man, I tell you, like, we had a situation a few weeks ago, on DraftKings. You know, it was a 12-man Thunderdome, and like four different guys had the same lineup. And luckily that night I was one of the ones that had that lineup. I mean, what a great situation I was in. I mean, I'm sitting there playing now basically in a 7 or 8 man Thunderdome, and I'm basically playing, you know, with $20,000 free dollars in there. And I mean, these are the kind of situations that, you know, I get excited about. As a matter of fact, I've started thinking about it. And Peter, I don't know what you think about this, but a few people have asked me about this. In cash games, if you think that there's going to be a very common lineup, and what I would contend, this is what Peter was just talking about, there's 4 or 5 kind of locks every night in the NBA. And it may be like that on FanDuel in the NFL, which I don't do a lot of. So you're basically looking, probably at the end of the night, you're looking at 3 to 6 lineups that are actually in play if you are using an optimizer, if you're, you know, spending just a little bit of money to be informed on what the projections are. But if your number one optimal lineup, say, is 290 points, and you can just sort of, from experience, look at it and just be like, you know what, this is going to be a really popular lineup. Peter, do you think that it actually makes sense to take your number 2 lineup, which, say, is 289 points or 288.5 points or whatever it may be, and let's just assume that you're spread across 50-50s, maybe some head-to-heads. I do a lot of 3-mans because I like 3-mans. I mean, what would be your recommendation on that? I mean, even in cash games, can you come off the optimal, or do you think that you just have to still let everyone else make the mistake of not playing the best team?
Yeah, and it becomes a lot of game theory too. It's a great question, and I think in 3-mans, 5-mans, you absolutely have to do what you can to be unique. And you know, with some opponents, you know what they're going to do too. And some of the guys who play the highest volume, who've had a ton of success, I mean, you know, Empire specifically, like he's always just played what he thinks is optimal. And, you know, that has worked extremely well for him. And, you know, if people know that you're going to do that, other smart guys, then they'll, you know, basically he can force them to have to do something different. And there's a couple other guys that I think definitely do that.
Well, right. Empire will never come off the best team, even if he's not worried about game theory one bit.
Well, and he's also just established that. And he's, you know, obviously had a ton of success. And I think, you know, that's historically how I've tried to play it almost all the time. I do that. But, you know, looking through my results, you know, in leagues, I've done really well, but I've done actually pretty bad, especially over the last couple of years on like 1K plus 3-mans. And that's because I've had the same lineup a lot. I've actually broken down those results. So the same thing can be said for 5-mans. And, you know, I noticed that this week, a lot of the 3 and 5-mans, you know, the one nice thing if you're playing those games is that lineup was like, you know, and some of them, like, there's a 5-man that I played where every single person had that lineup except for one person. I played something a little different. So it's pretty wild, what's going on right now, in the industry. And I think depending on the game type, you absolutely have to do what you can to be unique. And, you know, the 50-50s, I think you should probably just still play the optimal, given the nature of the payout. But, to your question, I think in general, the other formats, you absolutely should. Well, head to head, I think.
One thing I think is interesting, and I know this is going to sound like it's not a coincidence, but I think it is. I mean, Peter, when you look at 3 or 4 lineups at the end of the night before you submit your cash team on FanDuel, say for NBA, there might be 3 or 4 teams that are all basically projecting exactly the same based on your projections. But don't you think that when you look at those 3 or 4 teams, even though they're projecting the same, you can point to the lineup that you think will be the most popular?
Of course.
I mean, just because these different players have different characteristics. I mean, just because everyone's projecting the same, you know, we're talking about median projections, but there's people, the floors on these guys are different, and you can just look at certain situations. And I mean, I can think of this over the last couple of weeks with me. A lot of times, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for Oklahoma City, he's been projecting really well. But that's just not a guy that I think people really want to play in cash games. First of all, this is the first year where he's been sort of the lead guy on the team. He's really scoring dependent. Yes, he's been projecting for 5.5 or 6 times his salary, but I've just been pretty confident that people weren't going to play him on their main team. And at the end of the night, you know, he may be on the optimal lineup on Daily Roto or whatever side it may be. But like, you just sort of know when you're it's a kind of a feel thing. Like, he's not going to be on that lineup. So I don't know. I just think that a lot of times we all kind of end up in the same place. And I know people don't believe this, but like, a lot of times I'll pull up the Thunderdome or a 10-man 1K double up, and I'll see Hoops line up, or I'll see Empires line up. And I've already seen that lineup. I mean, I know what it is. I mean, I've considered it, or I've got it, or it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit hard to explain, but it's really not, it doesn't surprise me at all that so many times people end up on very similar lineups in cash games.
Especially this last week, man, on FanDuel, it was just like the most, like, and this is the funny part, is they don't think it's obvious, and now that's a joke. Oh, this is so obvious. But if you look at just like projections around the industry and some of the pricing, like, you're just the way rosters are built, it led to that. And that's why so many people had it. Like, that's just, the argument that it was obvious is that, yes, people that clearly aren't working together, don't talk to each other, might not even be in the same echo chamber, might not even be using the same projections, still land on that lineup. And yeah, I think that's where we're at with all these games now. It's just,
and by the way, I will just say that I think a very big edge right now in DFS, and you have to have the bankroll to do it, and you have to have sort of the balls to play in it. But I really think one of the best things to do if you're a sharp player is to play in these extremely small field, high dollar GPPs. I'm talking about 10, 20, 30, 40 man GPPs. If you can have a great cash lineup, and then you can make a 2v2 alteration off of it into a slightly lower owned combination, or, a very low owned combination, a 2v2, a 3v3, maybe even the situation like you had, Pete, where you went to Hunt over the guy from
and I just moved. I played Baker last week too. The team was met with Matt Ryan, and just switching to like Baker Mayfield was a big. There's a couple little things that you could do that you're giving up maybe a smidge of projection, but you're clearly going to be unique.
There will be guys in these, like in the Thunderdome in the NBA, there will be guys that are 25% owned in the $8 or $15 or $44 GPP, but in the 10 or 12 or 20 man Thunderdome, you're the only one that's got him, because basically people are putting in their cash lineups, and the guy is not a cash game option. And so, but he's a great GPP play, but you're basically going to get him at no ownership, or maybe there's one other team that's got him. So, I know that there's sort of the mass multi-entry strategy, and then there's the cash strategy. But somewhere in between that, I think there's an opportunity to play in these small field GPPs where people more or less are playing their cash lineups.
Yeah, that's something I need to be better at too. I mean, I think the reason I had to, obviously my ROIs have been trending down relatively. Initially in the industry, I could just play my cash game lineups and my whatever I thought was best, and it was relatively low owned. And, those were my best tournament lineups back in the day. And still now, a lot of my good wins have come from something that's similar to my cash games. But one area I certainly need to improve is figuring out how to, still maintain a high projection while just gaining a little bit of uniqueness. And that's what some of the best players have done. And there's been a huge edge in that in tournaments. And, that's just the nature of the way DFS is going. And I think, I'm proud of being able to survive in these cash games. And, I definitely want to get better at tournaments, but what you're talking about, Wilson, is a big thing that the best players in the world now are doing a great job of, and they're making a lot of money in tournaments.
Yeah, I think just from my side of things on the tournament, I agree completely with what Wilson's saying. I mean, that's been my strategy for a while now, where guys like Hoop, guys like Empire, guys like you guys, like, they don't even look at the tournaments. They just make the best team, jamming in every single tournament. And that's just what they do, which is fine. And that's how they're the best in the world. That's how they make money. But when I know that, especially in like baseball, I mean, baseball more than other sports even.
Absolutely.
They'll still do it in baseball, and I can get a stack in there against them that's not near optimal. But when my stack goes off, I'm going to take first place every time. I couldn't agree more, Wilson. Like, there's just so much edge.
Way, stack might not be optimal, but the projection is, probably just fractions of a point less than what the optimal lineup is.
On a one-day sample, too, where anything can happen. Like, it's crazy to me. And that's one of the reasons I get so mad about this debate, though, because I agree with you and Cash. Like, if you know everyone is going to play that team, you're never comfortable about every single play on a team like Pete did last week. Sub to Baker and Hunt instead of those two. Like, just a little change like that with two guys that are super close, maybe not quite as good of plays. I couldn't agree more with that. It's just such a good point.
Yeah, it's a way that. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Pete. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, that's the way the industry's going. And what we were just talking about, like the frustrating part about all of this is that, you know, these people aren't even working together. They're not talking lineups. A lot of people are just ending up on similar lineups because people have a similar process. And like when the pricing's really bad, that's the big thing that happened last week. And that's happened a ton on FanDuel specifically this year is they haven't adjusted pricing and there's just locks like that. Like no matter what projection system doing, if you're doing anything that's a math-based approach, you're going to have like a lot of these players on your team. And that's because the pricing has just been so poor. So it's really frustrating. I do appreciate Jeff having me on. I do think he's done some things to build up the industry, but this specific instance is very frustrating and it's hurting the industry because he's not educated on the situation that's happening and he's just flat out wrong about last week.
Right.
So one thing I think that, do you guys have any advice that we can give to the people, like these people that are just pissed right now, these people that are just rallying off Jeff? I mean, what can we tell these people to where they don't think they're getting cheated? Like they're just listening to what he's saying. This is the frustrating part for me because they just don't listen when you talk to them because they're so convinced that you're working with everyone. Wilson, I'll start with you. What can we tell these people? Any advice for them?
Yeah, I think that first of all, if you just want to believe the worst and believe that people are pooling money, colluding, entering in, you know, one person is entering in lineups across 30 or 40 accounts, my advice would be to take advantage of it. Figure out the way, find the contest where you feel confident that a bunch of people are going to play the same lineup, and those are the contests you want to be in. You know, if you're really worried about the double ups, maybe avoid that contest. But first of all, I mean, this is not something that should be a detriment to your bankroll. This is something that you can take advantage of. Of course, my view on why people have the same lineup is what Pete was saying. The pricing's bad. Everyone has sort of got this group thing now because all these projections are getting everyone to the same place. Figure it out. Take advantage of it. And then just the bigger point, just as far as worrying about that, you know, sort of the industry, people in the industry have information. They're colluding. They have more access to this than what you do. So basically, you kind of feel like that, you know, these pros are sort of, you know, in this secret club, and you don't have access to it. I would just say just to think about it realistically. Think about what benefit that would. What is the benefit of 30 or 40 people pooling their money together, or even 4 or 5 people pooling their money together, and intentionally entering the same lineup in the same contest? And I think if you just think about it rationally, you come to the conclusion that it just doesn't really make any sense. Yes, there are going to be people that talk, and there's going to be, and by the way, there is, like, if Peter, who's a great DFS player, and, you know, Birdwings or whoever it may be is a great DFS player, and they're communicating throughout the day, sharing ideas on DFS, you know, it goes without saying that they've got an advantage. But what I would say, and what I did when I got started playing DFS, is I just started trying to be part of different communities, and, you know, whether it's Daily Roto's Slack channel or, you know, Twitter, or just meeting people in the industry, because, you know, I do think it's important that, you know, it is nice to have someone to bounce your ideas off of and tell you why you're being stupid or running ideas. So, you know, I think that most importantly, I don't think there's really very much to worry about. But I do think that there is something to the fact that, you know, find yourself a home base, find yourself a community of people, and, you know, and try to educate yourself and try to learn more. And, I mean, there's just a million places you can do that. So, I just say basically take advantage of this situation by entering into these contests, and then, as far as this, theory that people are doing what Jeff talked about, it's just not true. Don't worry about it. And then, try to find yourself a place to go.
Just to piggyback too, real quick before, and then I'll go to you, Pete. But so first of all three of us are from different. We don't even talk really that much during the week. We all play every day. So we're from three different backgrounds really with how we're playing. So we definitely aren't coming from the same place telling you this either. But another thing that annoys me so much is when people like start talking about algorithms and all this crazy stuff like that, when truth of the matter is, I mean, I think I know most of the top players, where I at least have talked to them at some point. So many people are going to Daily Roto or RotoGrinders or Fantasy Labs or Guru Elite or wherever, and the projections are all they're using. They're using the projections to get to their point where they got 5 or 6 teams they're choosing between and the players they're choosing between. Now, hardly anyone I know uses some complicated algorithm that people just – I hate that misconception. Sure, some people probably do use an algorithm. Most of the people I know don't. They use Daily Roto or Fantasy Labs or RotoGrinders or wherever. Pete, what do you think?
Well, first, Finney's comment, I think his last point is really important. And you asked me that question because, throughout the history of the industry, I've made a lot of good friends and certainly have talked DFS with a ton of people, both, on air and privately. And, some of my best friends, that's how things have come about. And, the three of us, we've competed against each other. We've all talked fantasy before. That's just kind of the nature of it. And that's, what, Wilson said, like, that's been a lot of my process from the get-go is like, figure out who's smart, try to listen to them, try to find that good content out there, try to meet people in the industry that you think are doing really smart things. And, those are good things that you can do. Of course. Like, that's literally every business. That's life. That's like, if you want to get better at something, figure out who's the best at it and try to go learn from them, or figure out the person that you can get access to that's good at it. Like, everyone needs a mentor, and, not to get too deep into this stuff, but the reason human beings are where we are and why we've taken over this world and have this sophisticated life relatively is because we work well together. Like, we're social creatures. Like, we have learned how to work together to solve problems. And that's evolved in DFS. And, you look at content now and the optimizers and the projections and the communities, like, everyone's getting a lot better. So that's my advice is like, if you love this game, do what you can to get better. And pertaining to, a lot of the groupthink and the echo chambers and the same lineups, like, there's a ton of opportunity in these different formats, and, attack where you can. And like, the other thing too that bothered me, with some of this other like talk is like, of course, everyone's going to do like one thing I've learned over, my time in the industry is like, people are going to act out of their own self-interest. Everyone's trying to make money. Like, sure, there's definitely things you want to do. You don't want to cross any like ethical boundaries or whatever, but at the end of the day, almost everyone's going to do what's in their best interest to make money. So like, you have to evolve and get better, and like, that's the nature of the game. And DFS isn't like supposed to be it's not free money for everyone. Like, it's gotten hard, and like, you have to work and be smart to win.
Yeah, I agree completely. And just because you're like, the people that are losing, try to get better. Like these guys both just said, get on Twitter, get on one. Every site pretty much has a Slack channel now. You can get in, and like at RotoGrinders, you can literally get in an NBA, NFL, all these different chats. And there's people in there all day long talking about the plays, like the best values of the night, who's in and out, everything. Like, how much better you get just sitting in there? I don't care if you're working a 9-to-5 job. Go in there on your lunch break and hop in there for a minute. Like, there's so many ways to get better if you want to get better. Don't always think you're getting cheated. Like, try to improve. I don't care who you are. It really upsets me. And that's why I wanted to do this with you guys. We didn't talk beforehand. Like, we just we wanted to go through it naturally, and I hope people were able to get something out of this. But Wilson, you got anything else?
No, and that's just a really good point. I had no idea what you guys, I guess I had a general idea because I've seen some of the banner on Twitter, but that's a good point. Like, we didn't have I didn't have any idea what you guys were going to say about this. It's really just common sense. So, I think that, I think I'm glad we came out and kind of aired this out, because even for me now, it has me thinking about ways to take advantage of this new sort of era we're in, where people are all using projections and stuff. And I'm going to think about that more tonight, actually.
Pete, anything else before we hop in?
Chance to get better, try to be unique. I've worked on trying to make my projections better, and there's a lot of game theory out there, and hopefully this issue will be put to rest, but unfortunately this issue's been around since like 2012 and just keeps coming out. But biggest advice, just work on yourself, try to get better. You're not entitled to anything with DFS. It's a tough game, but it's fun, and hopefully you guys can immerse yourself in communities. And we hashed out a lot there. It was definitely good to air it out.
So let's hop into some more fun stuff here. Let's get that behind us. Let's hop into what we like more than anything. I mean, one of my favorite slates of the year, everybody's favorite, Thanksgiving football, right there with Christmas hoops, with the March Madness, with a bunch of other stuff we love. But Thanksgiving football is right up there for me with my favorite day of the year. We got nice big slates tomorrow. Let's see if we can help the people win some money here. What do you guys think? Let's hop in. And right out of the gate too, we got big quarterback news earlier this afternoon where the Lions are going to start. I think he's from Purdue, right? This Below guy. Is that his name? Pete?
That's his name. There's a lot of puns.
He's from Purdue, I think, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of puns on Twitter, and he's not been successful in preseason. And it's a I don't know. It's an interesting situation because that was already a low total game, and now the Bears defense, I think, is going to be really chalky. It already was, but even more so.
This is where I love having Wilson on, though, because he's really good with spots like this, and I think he can help. So everyone obviously knows this. The Bears are mispriced on both sites. The Bears D, I mean. Everyone's going to like the Bears side because the Lions got some scrub guy, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I've seen this guy chuck it around the yard a lot in football at Purdue, though. Like, I'm not saying he's a pro quarterback. I'm not saying any of that, but he's super cheap. Wilson, I mean, what can we do with this game? The spread's still only 4.5. It's back up. It's not like it's some crazy line move. I know it probably already moved a little bit anyways, but it's not like they're favored by some crazy amount, and the Bears suck. Like, what can we do with this game?
Yeah, I was thinking about this first game, and if it was NBA and there's a big player out of a center or a point guard, it's a lot easier for me to sort of deduct what that actually means than it is in football, because I don't understand the mechanics of what goes into a football game quite as well as I do a basketball game. And I think my initial thought on this game was, from what I saw last week from Trubisky, I actually watched a lot of that game because I was really heavy on Allen Robinson, which was good. Just the rest of my teams weren't good. My thought is that maybe he, maybe that offense with Allen Robinson, with Cohen, had turned the corner. And one thing I noticed they had done is they I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I always thought one thing that made that offense really good was how they used Cohen, sort of as that, dual threat running back, slot receiver. And it just sort of felt like things were clicking. And then, Detroit's defense is not great. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, well, maybe we can sort of have sort of a 3-man Chicago stack, which might be, pretty low owned. And you bring it back with, Galladay or Jones or whatever it may be. And so now with this quarterback news, it's like, I don't know. It does take a little bit of my excitement away from the game, I guess. I don't know. It's one of those deals. You just got such a low total, and I do think that if this game was on a main slate, you wouldn't really be very excited about it. But it's a 3-game slate, and in some spot you've just got to find a play that's not overly owned. And but I will be honest, I don't know about this guy yet. I mean, Peter, you football, man. What do you know about this guy?
I just know he hasn't been that accurate. I think originally I was looking at this earlier and I want to make sure I have this right. I think he was cut by the Browns and then picked up by the Lions. And obviously coming out Driscoll, who is not nowhere near Matthew Stafford caliber, but Driscoll's at least an athletic runner. And I think we're seeing more and more value placed on like the running quarterback. The analytics love guys who can run, and obviously what's happening with the Ravens. So I do think Driscoll is at least a serviceable backup, and I think this David Blow guy is not good. But I need to dig into it more. It's actually something I'm looking to more tonight. I do think this game actually has quite a few plays just because we need the value here. Michael Thomas, Kamara, Zeke, the Dallas receivers. There's some strong plays in the later games, and the value actually is pretty nice in this Bears offense just because Taylor Gabriel is going to miss. So you have Anthony Miller, who's cheap, who's going to get a lot of targets, who's going to run a lot of routes. At least that's the assumption. And then a preseason darling is this Wims guy, who's looks like a talented player on paper. Levitan and these guys are raving about him. I'm always a little cautious just because, they dominated preseason. They have good measurables, but there's clearly a reason they're still, a backup relatively. But he's at least looks like a guy who's a good plug and play. He's min price. So both those guys are interesting. And then the Bears defense is just super cheap, specifically on DraftKings. So now we're looking at a situation where they might be like 60% owned. So there's probably some good value in fading them in tournaments, even though they're going to be the clear, cash game defense.
And was Anthony Miller, because I don't know, Anthony Miller, this is his second year in the league, right? Wasn't he pretty good last year?
Yeah, he's a big, he's struggled to stay healthy relatively, but I think it might be his third year in the league. He's 25. Okay. I could be wrong on that, but he's had preseason buzz and he's done well when he's been on the field. So, and this year is kind of weird. He's been beat up a little bit. We've seen Gabriel do well. Trubisky's obviously been terrible, and clearly Allen Robinson. I mean, he's one of the best receivers in the league, so he's going to soak up the most targets. But yeah, Anthony Miller got a lot of preseason buzz and, has done well before, and he's, starting to be on the field. I mean, last week he had 9 targets, 6 catches, 77 yards. Week before that against the Rams, he had 11 targets, 6 catches. So he's really cheap. He should see a lot of volume. Cohen's good too, obviously. I think Cohen and Montgomery are both considerations. And the Detroit side is really hard now. I wanted to play Galladay, these Thanksgiving slates for basically my entire DFS career. I've locked in Megatron, basically always played him. And I feel like I've played Galladay a lot over the years. So it's tough with Detroit now where we just don't have many plays. But maybe their defense or something. I don't know. Pivoting off this Bears defense will definitely get you a lot of leverage because with this news, they're going to be super, super chalky.
So from the tournament side, though, so this is where I think my strength is in DFS. I just don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. This is the thing. I know everyone's going to play these chalk Bears. The Bears have been terrible all year. The spread's only 4.5. It's not like they're favored by 10. Everyone's acting like they're favored by 10 and they're going to kill this team. I just don't understand how no Detroit guys are going to be owned. The Bears are going to be the chalk D. All the Bears guys are going to be the value high-owned guys. And they're favored by 4.5 on the road. It doesn't make sense to me. Wilson, help me out.
20.5. Yeah.
I just don't I'm not even saying I think I'd almost rather just completely fade it and play a defense or something. Or at least if I'm going to play the Bears. What's that, Wilson?
What's their team total?
I mean, it's is it up on Pinnacle now? Not implied, the actual team total?
I haven't looked at Pinnacle. I'm sure it's, 19.5.
It's super low,
Yeah, but I mean, let's just say, to your point, Tony, let's say that Detroit scores 17 points and they turn the ball over one time.
Yeah.
That's not a smash for the Bears defense.
They're going to be 60 or 70% owned at this price.
Their defense will. The receivers, I don't know if will be that high. I think they'll be.
Anthony Miller has to be.
But it's just the problem is if you're not going to the reason they're going to be so chalky is because people want to play Michael Thomas, Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara. And when you start talking about fading these guys, then you're looking at some other just really questionable value.
I think those 3 are locks for the record too. I'll have those 3 on every team, but you can pivot to we'll get to other pivots as we go.
Yeah, there are pivots. There's some tough spots.
It goes back to our point though. I think in the last conversation about the duplicated lineups and stuff, I think you can pivot Anthony Miller to Traquan. Obviously it's super optimal to play Anthony Miller in that. I'm not saying it's not. He's got more volume, everything. I'm not denying that. But when Traquan gets an 80-yard touchdown and Anthony Miller gets you 9 fantasy points, you have a chance to win the whole slate. Right?
It's a great tournament slate. And these are, like, the Bears are a great fade in tournaments. Like, there's a lot of ways you can see the Bears just shit in the bed. They're on the road, short week. You still got Trubisky, who's, he's athletic, but he's been a donkey all year.
It is sort of funny to think about Bears receivers being chalky. I mean, that just sort of sounds like a fade opportunity. But to your point is, if you don't play them, you've got to play somebody cheap somewhere.
I like some cheap guys, so that's the scary part. But
I think Javon Wims on the Bears would be the better turn, even though he's like popular to a degree in our bubble. Like, Ian Hartitz is tweeting about him, and Levitan's.
Who did you say?
Hartitz is talking about Javon Wims, this min-price Bears guy.
I like him better than Anthony Miller.
I agree with that in tournaments. I think you play Anthony Miller in cash, and I think he's a good tournament fade.
So I just pulled up Pinnacle. We got the actual the total was 19.5 for the Bears with a ton of juice on the over though, and the Lions is 18.5 with a ton of juice on the under. So they're kind of juicing you a little bit pretty hard there. But Wilson, anything else in this game? What about these running backs? So Montgomery and Cohen. I think Cohen's going to be kind of everyone's play on DK to go with those other 2 running backs. What do you think, Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, my initial thought was Cohen was the play. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about the Bears early in the week. I was just thinking I wanted to play Cohen this week. And then, of course, I realized that it's on the 3-game slate and that maybe everyone else would be thinking the same thing. Yeah, I don't even know what the prices are yet on DraftKings, but just the way I'm thinking about it is that Montgomery should be much lower owned than Cohen, I would think.
Yeah. They're basically the same
400 more, and I think the projection's very similar, especially in DraftKings with the catches Cohen's been getting.
Yeah, and people just love the PPR for Cohen, I think.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the second game where we have, again, it's only a 3-game slate, so there's going to be a lot of chalky type plays. But like Pete said too, there's obviously the big 3 on the slate: Zeke, Kamara, Michael Thomas, where you got to decide to get on them or get off them. And the quarterback plays in this game, Dak is just severely underpriced on DraftKings. So, again, we're going to have the same debate tomorrow about all the syndicates playing the same team, because I think the cash team on DK comes pretty easy. Yeah, and we're not going to give the whole thing on here because that would really do it. But Dak, I'll say this, Dak is severely underpriced. I think a lot of people will play him. And for 500 more, you can get Josh Allen, who is a lot like Lamar, who's been just destroying football. No one's really going to play Josh Allen, though. I like this slate for tournaments tomorrow. Wilson, what do you think of this game? I mean, first of all,
they got Dak at 6K.
5.7. 5.7.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean,
5.7. Drew Brees is 68. Josh Allen 62. Matt Ryan.
They're making
64.
you play Dak in cash is the thing.
Yeah. So I think that when you get a situation like this, you just forget about the price for a second and just think about what are the paths to Dak failing. And I think about Buffalo's defense, and I'm not Evan Silva, and so I don't know exactly, but just from what I've through my own play this year, I think about them as having a very good pass defense. I think about them as being a little bit susceptible to the run. So right there, I mean, it's a tough matchup. I don't think, Dak at home, it hasn't really mattered the matchup this year, but anytime you can get a very highly owned player in a tough matchup, you have to sort of consider fading it, at least for tournaments. I don't know how you get away from Dak in cash games. I don't think you can, but yeah, I think that, right off the bat, I can see past to the Bears defense failing. I can see past to Dak failing. If they're both going to be 40% owned or whatever it may be, then yeah,
it's going to be way higher.
No,
it's going to be higher. I promise. Like the team comes together, it's going to be the same thing. I'm telling you.
That team comes together for sure. But
you know the team I'm talking about exactly.
Yeah, teams have gotten too smart though. Like in tournaments, Josh Allen would never have been picked before, and now people are because I mentioned that today on DFS Edge. I'm Josh Allen stands out like a sore thumb as the tournament play. Who's going to pay 500 more for Josh Allen over Dak? with Buffalo with a lower team total on the road, but that's how people are thinking now. And obviously Josh Allen, his distribution of scores are fantastic for tournaments, giving his rushing upside. And you got great guys to stack him with too in this game. John Brown, who's been an absolute beast all year, super consistent, finally had his blow-up game. And then a spot that I love, that is classic, CSU brand thing that I do believe in this. Cole Beasley revenge game, which the revenge game is different sport to sport. Sometimes it's all noise, but I do believe there's some signal, especially in football, where, these coaches and these teams, they get to kind of decide where the ball's going in the red zone, which is obviously a huge part of the scoring. I mean, Beasley's been good, and he's 4,700. I think he's interesting too. So it's not Steve Smith level, narrative straight here, but Cole Beasley, maybe a 7 out of 10. And I think he's a pretty solid play. So,
and the Cowboys have been, I think they're more susceptible inside receivers than on the outside.
Middle of the field. Middle of the field is where you want to beat them. And to your point too, I think, Zeke is the really good play. He's a tough fade because the Bills have not been nearly as good against the run as they have. They've been very good against the pass. So they have probably, it's either Gilmore or Tre'Davious White, who's the best corner. And this would be one question to pose to you guys. A lot of people are assuming Tre'Davious White's going to shadow Amari Cooper. I think that probably will happen. He's really, really cheap on DraftKings, $6K. Michael Gallup's 5,500, who I think is a fantastic play, but Amari, going against, a top corner, is interesting. And then also, Amari Cooper's home road splits when he's been on Dallas are insane, averaging 29 DraftKings points versus 8, I believe, on the year so far in Dallas. And that split is like the same profound, crazy, difference going back to last year. Which makes sense. Indoors, at home, Dak's more comfortable. So you have a lot of factors here with the Dallas passing game. Finney, just off the cuff, would you go with Amari versus the tough matchup? Would you go Gallup for a little cheaper? Dust off Randall Cobb, who's actually been productive.
And he's cheap too, by the way.
$5K.
Yeah. So I think that Peter's right about. So in tournaments, what I would say is that right off the bat, I think that Josh Allen seems like a great play over Dak from a game theory perspective. Gallup over Amari Cooper. But I'm telling you that the way that I've been shocked this year about a lot of these real obvious game theory plays, that they're so obvious that all of a sudden the ownership ends
up. They're chalk. Yeah.
Yeah. It ends up like in my mind, Amari should be 4 times or 5 times as owned as Gallup, but it won't be that. And I think the same thing about Dak over Josh Allen, but it won't be that either. And so I want to look at the projections around the industry for what they're expecting. And by the way, I think we've had a really hard time projecting players' ownership this year. I think it's been a really hard time because I start thinking about, well, what are the the percentage chances that Gallup outperforms Amari and things like that. I don't know. I'm like you. I right off the bat, I just think on this small of a slate, I'd rather play Gallup than Amari, Allen over Dak. But I don't know. I don't
People
know.
are all thinking that way. Look at Russ Wilson.
What the discount's going to be.
Russ Wilson, week 11, he was the stone nuts. Everyone knew it, and he was low owned at the end. Everyone pivoted off of him, and it's crazy, man. Everyone's gotten so much sharper. Another example of just how clear it is that the industry is that much sharper. Week 5, Will Fuller. The guy has done nothing all year. Back in the day, 2014, 2015, he'd be 5% or less. He's 30% owned as he goes for 3 touchdowns and over 200 yards. I
was almost going to bring that up just a second ago because NFL is, way below profitability for me compared to baseball and basketball. The Will Fuller week was very sobering for me. When I saw that ownership on him, I was like, oh my God, people are too freaking good at this.
And that's what's interesting this week on this slate. I'm just very interested to see ownership. Very, very interested to see the game theory and what people do. And Tony, you've done a great job. You've made some giblets in tournaments. You're the showdown master, which is Tony, all game theory. What do you? Yeah.
Listen to you guys try to talk me up after.
I haven't won 200-some thousand in a day in a while. Come on.
Listen,
nice.
I have some strengths. I think game theory is one of them. Cash games is obviously not one of them.
It's 100% game theory is one of them.
I think Dak is going to be I think I agree with you guys on Cooper maybe sneaking through, but Dak, I see no way he's not massively owned. Like all the casual.
If he's massively owned, then he'll be with Amari. Because the other thing is, one thing
I don't know if Amari fits though. Like, are people going to fade one of the three? I guess that's the question. Can people fade one of the three, the big three, which I can't? I have to play Michael Thomas, Kamara, Zeke. I want those three. I need those three. I'll get different somewhere else.
I think all the people in the industry are, but one thing we have to keep in mind too about the slate, which is great, is we have way more casuals than usual.
Way more.
If you look at the volume, Thanksgiving is one of those rare days. Like we're in the middle. I mean, football is obviously the best time of seasonality, but Thanksgiving every year, people come out of the woodwork. And it makes sense. People are locked indoors with their family all day and they want to gamble. They want to drink. I mean, it's just classic.
No doubt.
I do think Dak is an obvious play when you just look at the pricing. So I think the casual person might see Dak Amari, but I don't know. I
was going to say this to you guys though too. I'm glad you brought it up because I really think there's something to this where more people play guys in that first game, even though it's a 37 total, just so they can get that good start and see their touchdowns go up early and see their winnings and show their family they're at the table eating their turkey like, oh, look, I'm in first. I got this. And don't you guys think there's something to that?
The tout life.
Yeah.
Stack up the first game, take a screenshot.
And it's even funner on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, everyone needs a player in the first game. Damn, that's the part.
It's the best, and there's going to be people that fully stack that first game just so they can literally be in first place after the game in a 37 total. But let's move on to the last game we got.
Well, wait, hold on. Just one guy I didn't even mention is the Buffalo running back. Is he not going to be real low owned?
I think he's going to truly be low owned.
No one can play him. He's got to be low.
Yeah, he's 5,800, which is an awkward price. And there are some reasons not to like him in general because he has lower touchdown equity with Josh Allen stealing carries, and you got fucking Frank Gore sorry for the bleep there. Frank Gore stealing carries. But Vinny, I'm glad you brought him up. I'm a big Devin Singletary guy. I think I like his talent.
Does he benefit at all if they get behind by 2 touchdowns, or who's benefiting that?
Can't hurt.
It's not great. He had 6 targets 3 weeks ago. Last 2 weeks, 2 targets, 1 target, but that's game flow dependent relatively. So,
I mean, who's their 2-minute running back?
Well, they're going to. I mean, the thorn for Singletary is always going to be Frank Gore. I mean, Frank Gore they love Frank Gore.
For some reason, I don't picture Frank Gore in the 2-minute offense, but hell, maybe
he shouldn't be. He shouldn't be. They're letting Singletary be that guy on a relative scale. Gore will come in occasionally, but Singletary should be in if they're down.
One key thing to the slate, too, is tight end. We haven't talked a ton, but there's only really one decent tight end, Cook. So I think Witten and Dawson Knox in this game should be two pretty popular guys. You don't like Dawson Knox?
Oh, I like Dawson Knox. I'm just saying Witten. It's always.
I think Witten's going to be the chalkiest tight end.
No, it's going to be Cook, I think.
On DK?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it could be.
There's the one lineup that has a cheap tight end for sure. But Witten versus Jarwin's another. I mean, that's an interesting one. And we now have Austin Hooper out, so Jaden Graham we can talk about in a second. We have Jesper Horsted too.
There's so many, just crappy.
No one's ever heard of Jesper Horsted, so he's not going to be clicked.
I've never even heard of him. I didn't hear of him till you just brought his name up. I've never even heard of that dude.
He's going to play. He's going to play for the Bears. I mean, that's going to be their guy.
Another Bears guy?
Jesper Horsted. That's how you pivot off the other guys. You go with Dusty Jesper Horsted for 2,500.
Oh, man. Let's move on to the featured game. We got Atlanta just pounded New Orleans a few weeks ago, too, somehow. New Orleans has to be mad. The spread is only 6.5, though, so less than a touchdown, 48.5. Wilson, what do you think of this game?
Well, I don't know. That game a few weeks ago, boy, that was
was that not the most shocking game of the year?
That definitely.
Yeah, it had to be, right? I mean, there was a big situational stat favoring teams that have not won a game or have only won one game coming off a bye week at home. it's a lot of factors like that, and it's sort of lazy handicapping. But the against the spread record, well, that was actually on the road, but that maybe it was just in general. But anyway, that situation was heavily in favor of Atlanta, but still, it was really hard to imagine that happening. I always get twisted up on Michael Thomas. I played him like every week last year, and it was awesome. And this year, I've unfortunately faded him a few times when it did not work out well. I always worry about like a game script situation because New Orleans is always a pretty sizable favorite. But the guy like gets there in the first half every week, and so it doesn't really matter. I'm upset about Alvin Kamara because I've been playing him, and I've been racking up yards and catches, but there's like been no touchdowns. So I think when I was thinking about maybe just building like 10 or 20 lineups tonight, maybe for 333 or the Million Maker or something like that, and doing them by hand. And you talk about the big three. Do you think you could make a case where you just put two of the three in each lineup and just pray that one of them doesn't go off and just sort of mix and match it? I'm just thinking of ways to try to have some sort of differentiation, I guess.
Yeah. I want to get on that because I think some people have that thought and people are talking about it. I think people are going to fade Kamara out of the three just because Michael Thomas's worst game this year is 16 points, and Zeke is much cheaper than Kamara. But man, Kamara is my favorite play on the whole board, so I'm struggling. I mean, like you said, Wilson, he's been racking up yards and catches, and yeah, the signal is very strong for Kamara. He's just had awful touchdowns.
Oh, and and don't forget about all the missed tackles. I keep reading about how many missed tackles he causes every week. And I'm like,
he does. I mean, he's incredible. I mean, he really is, and it's he's had a touchdown called back. He's had a couple just bad breaks. Obviously, there is risk with Latavius Murray, and Drew Brees can throw to a lot of guys. You have Taysom Hill down there for some specialty plays. So it's not like he shouldn't be scoring touchdowns like we saw initially from him, but he hasn't scored since week 3 when he scored 2 touchdowns. And, look at the last 3 weeks. He's gotten 27 catches over the last 3 weeks. I mean, this guy's getting essentially 10 to 11 targets every game. So I'm still buying that volume, and he's electric.
Of course, last week a lot of those catches were on the last drive of the game when, I was about to say they were down by a lot, but they weren't, were they? They were tied.
Thomas had catches there. I just think, obviously last week was a great game environment, but I love Kamara this week. So I have trouble fading him, but I think most people are like, I'll just play Zeke and Michael Thomas. So
the other guy.
What percentage do you guys think play all 3 of them on DraftKings?
Like in the Million Maker?
Just a standard tournament Million Maker, yeah.
30%.
Play all 3?
No, it can't be that high, can it?
I think it's pretty high too. I don't know.
I actually think it is because I think
30?
you start breaking down their percentages. Like Zeke will probably be like 75% owned, 70% owned, or something crazy.
They should all 3 be like
Thomas.
70.
If Julio's out, that only bumps up that percentage too. By the way, and I'm pretty nervous about Julio because then you only have so many spends. Like you take out Julio, he's 7,300. DraftKings specifically made the pricing pretty soft this week.
Especially when you throw in that pairs D.
Yeah. So the pricing's really soft. So it's pretty easy to fit all 3 guys and still have a solid lineup.
But just one point on that, I don't see, I've heard a lot of people complaining about how soft the pricing is, but I don't necessarily blame DraftKings for that because if you don't know if there's going to be any value, then if you put everyone at the normal prices, you can't make a team.
Right. Last week was hard too. DraftKings last week was much harder to make a team relative to FanDuel. And I think that normally drops volume a little bit. But yeah, Thanksgiving specifically, you have way more casuals. And like you said, if you price everyone where they normally are, it'd be very challenging to make a team.
Who runs more routes between Ted Ginn and Tre'Quan Smith?
Great question. I need to look specifically at last week. Ted Ginn's running those deep routes. Tre'Quan, they both have been on the field quite a bit. It looks like Ginn was only on the field for 30.
Been really good to me.
Yeah. He's about as good of a guy to throw out there for, a hopeful 70-yard tutter. He was on the field for 39 snaps, and Traquan, he caught the touchdown last week, but he didn't have anything else really. He played 47 of 66 snaps. I'll try to pull up the route stuff while we're here, but go ahead.
So Traquan actually plays a little bit more than Ted Ginn now.
I mean, Traquan's coming off the injury, so we're I think we have 3 weeks since he came off the injury.
2 weeks ago, he played more too. I think both weeks.
He played 57 of 69 snaps when he first came back versus the Falcons. 2 targets, 1 catch, 13 yards, and I played him. A lot of people declared him like the gold star tournament play. I thought he really was a really good tournament play against the Bucs, and the guy plays 42 of 70 snaps, 1 catch, 1 target, 0 catches for the goose egg. And then last week, 1 catch, 13 yards, but it was a touchdown.
So what are guys like that going to be owned at for a slate like this? Is Traquan going to be like 10%?
They're both at 7% on RG right now. Both Ginn and Traquan are both 7%. That's what I mean. Like, I could not play a chalky Bears guy over one of these guys in a tournament. I couldn't let myself do it. Like, I just can't.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if we get the Julio news, because we have Julio out, and keep in mind we have Hooper out. That's, that could change things a lot, because Calvin Ridley's expensive. He's 6,600. Amari's 6K. Gallup's 5,500. John Brown's 6,300. Those are kind of the tier of guys you're considering there. Ridley's the most expensive. I thought Ridley was the other. Julio was the other sort of Gallup Amari situation, but I'm not sure about that. Maybe people start to think that Ridley's sort of like the 1B there. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And the other guy that we ought to consider for sure at 4,500 if Julio's out is Russell Gage. And even if he's not, I mean, the guy last week got 10 targets for 8 catches, 76 yards. Julio played the majority of that game. He was against Tampa Bay, but Russell Gage is out there.
Who are their other pass catchers for Atlanta if Julio doesn't play?
It's those 2 guys. Then you're giving some targets to Jaden Graham. Obviously Hooper was a big part of the offense. He's out, and then Devontae Freeman's coming back.
Right?
Devontae Freeman's back.
Yeah, Devontae Freeman.
Yeah, he's back. So yeah, it's that's an interesting game right there. Obviously has the highest total. The Atlanta side's interesting. New Orleans, I think everyone's going to play Thomas and Kamara. Do you have a preference out of those? Traquan Smith, Ginn? I mean, we haven't talked about Jared Cook, who's like the only tight end that most people have heard of.
He's outrageous on FanDuel too. Like, he's 2K more than every other tight end.
Yeah. FanDuel, the pricing's actually tougher than DraftKings this week.
I got my favorite FanDuel play too. I always got to throw one play out that Pete can laugh at me about and Wilson can make fun of me, but it's only on FanDuel. But my boy Taysom is a receiver, boys. I can't wait to play him. So yeah, I knew I'd get some laughs.
That's just a classic Tony, and it's not even bad. I mean,
he's 4,700. Like, I actually really like it. So
against Arizona, the guy went for 21 fantasy points, 3 catches, 63 yards, tutter. I think he ran one in too. I know it sounds crazy, but I think he has upside at that price, and he's going to be literally 1% owned, which I'm good with on a 3-game slate. That's a good Kamara fade candidate, right? Like, you don't play Kamara or Breeze or something.
Oh, I like it. You don't play Breeze for sure. I like it with Kamara and Thomas because you get inside the 10. He can throw it to either one of them. There's so many possibilities with him in there. I wouldn't play Breeze with him.
How many pass attempts does he have this year? That's a good question.
It's got to be a decent amount. I mean, by a decent amount, I mean like probably 7 or something. Yeah. I'll never forget last year at that sports betting championship because I'd played him all year. He literally, did you guys remember this?
No.
The playoff game? He literally threw a 50-yard touchdown. It got called back for a holding. And then the very next play, he ran a 50-yard fly pattern, and they interfered him. 2 straight plays, he almost had a 50-yard touchdown, and both plays were a penalty.
Oh, man.
It was the worst.
This is a crazy thought, but who is the punt returner for the Cowboys?
Tavon Austin.
Baby.
Now we're talking. Wilson, you know how much money I've lost on Tavon Austin?
Let me ask you this. If Tavon Austin returns a punt for a touchdown and you play a wide receiver and you play the Cowboys defense, do you get 2 touchdowns?
Yeah, double dipper.
Yeah, the double dip. I mean, Wilson, you're literally doing – this is like I burned so much money on. Like, I'm not being facetious or like amplifying this figure. I don't think I'm embellishing here. I bet I've lost $250,000 on Tavon Austin, maybe more.
But realistically, I don't even know what the guy's usage is. Is there a 2 or 3% chance that he has 15 DraftKings points or no?
I don't even know if we have a projection on him.
The hard part is
he at running back now?
No, he's receiver.
Bales tweeted out the GOAT tweet. I mean, it's true. He's been playing the wrong position his whole life. I mean, the guy literally has the best YouTube highlights of all time. If you want to go down the YouTube rabbit hole.
Did he go to West Virginia?
Oh, his high school and then at West Virginia, this guy made everyone look silly. We're talking 200-plus yards all the time. I played him in fantasy in college. The guy was just the fucking GOAT. I mean, we're talking.
I just say, he gets a 50-yard end around for a touchdown. He returns.
I literally don't think we have a projection on him.
There's one NRG for him.
What do you guys been projected
I
on?
mean, 2 or something. I mean, he doesn't have a big projection, but it's in there.
He scored a rushing touchdown earlier this year. I remember that. I was tilted out of my mind.
It was a sweet play. I remember the play.
Yeah.
Yeah. The guy's electric. I mean, he's like.
I mean, how do you not run 2 or 3 plays to that guy every game? I don't get it.
Yeah. Dude, trust me. I've beaten my head against the wall and just burned so much money on Tavon. I mean,
I feel like you know he's good.
He's the most electric player I've ever seen with the ball in his hands, ever.
You're hurting me right now.
I mean, seriously. We're talking Tyreek Hill, Tavon Austin. Who, I mean, there's not many guys. Remember Deontay Hall when he played for the Chiefs?
Randy Moss.
No, I mean, Randy Moss is just a man amongst boys. I'm talking that quick twitch, super fast, jukes the shit out of people. Tavon Austin,
Wilson didn't even know what he was doing bringing that up. I mean,
I didn't know there was. Honest to God, I did not know. I knew that Pete's got a history with Amari Cooper, but I had no idea about.
This is the real wound. I haven't lost my life savings. Tavon Austin. Oh man, I just remember so vividly. There was one week where I was just right about everything, and I had 40% Tavon Austin. I got 5th place in a tournament with Tavon Austin, a big tournament, the Wild, whatever. Yeah, Tavon Austin 0. Just, on top of so many other. I mean, the number might be higher than $250,000. It's bad. Tavon Austin was a huge DFS league for a long time.
Well, I think you got to get him back in the mix this week, just for old time's sake.
Just light some more money on fire on Thanksgiving. Sounds great.
Just a couple million makers or something. I mean,
I know he's going to house one now too.
He's got 8 points twice this year. I mean, one week against the Jets, he had five catches, but I think Gallup was obviously out, and I don't know. He had the 1 touchdown against the Eagles, but last 4 weeks, Wilson, here's his stats: 0 fantasy points, 0.7, 0, 0.
There's always those random guys, though, that are going to go off on Thanksgiving. Remember that New Orleans game last year where there was 4 random Saints touchdowns, no-name guys?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do remember that. And it reminds me of just a couple of weeks ago after everyone told me that every tout told me how condensed the route tree was or something for Tampa Bay, and I look up, and Winston's completed passes to 9 different guys, and not one of them is Evans or Godwin. I was like, who are these guys? How is this even possible? There's always dudes on every team that you don't even know about that can break.
Where do they come from?
I don't know.
The best.
I don't know.
Some of these tight ends that score touchdowns or whoever, it's just oh man.
We look at the stuff all week, talk about it, and then there's still guys that we've never even heard of that catch touchdowns. It's where do these dudes come from?
Yeah. No, you're right, Tony. There's probably 50% of these type slates. There's some dude that most people haven't even heard of that will get 2 1-yard touchdown catches.
I hope his name's Taysom Hill this week.
If it's Tavon Austin, I'm Oh, man.
You know it's going to be after Wilson brought it up.
It's so funny that Wilson brought it up.
I'm definitely going to have a Tavon Austin Cowboys D-stack.
What will be even better is if Wilson just ships all the money
with the stack.
and I don't have him.
I will be if I was to win a big tournament with Tavon and the Cowboys defense. I mean, talk about insufferable. Y'all wouldn't even.
That'd be so good. Oh man.
All right, before we get out of here, we got to at least pick a game or two. You guys like any sides here? I'll start with Pete Wilson. You think up the real winners here, Pete. Who you got in these 3 games? At least give me one or two winners.
I mean,
and don't freaking just tell me the Bears or something with this. I mean, don't give me the Bears.
I'm not the, how do I say this eloquently? I can't. Yeah. If you don't follow these picks. I mean, this isn't like the Wilson Twitter lock, which you're going to be firing off.
I'm trying to remember I remembered who this guy gave out one night. It was like Thursday at like midnight. And all of a sudden I see this guy say San Jose State. And then it just said big. I go in there and they're just pounding this team for me. You remember that, Wilson?
Yeah, well, San Jose State, man, that's an underrated team this year. Underrated team. We all do that.
You said big, though. It said big next to it.
Well, I also said this Sunday, I said if you do one thing today, take the Jets +3.
They won by 100.
You were on fire with the NBA. You your Twitter picks there for a while. And the best part is because like a lot of my buddies know Wilson now, so it's so funny. Like Bird messaged me. He's like, "Oh, Wilson called out a sharp play," and he's like, "This guy doesn't lose." And
he never loses. That's the thing.
It's so funny. All these people hit me up.
I guarantee if we looked at his plays, he's hitting like 75% on his Twitter page.
Yeah, the key is just to you just have to be disciplined enough to only do the best plays. The problem is that that's not always the case, is it?
I know I'm not exactly the best with only the best play. I dust off a lot of money with just random games.
Yeah.
Oh, Pete, give me a winner. I need a winner.
As do all of us. So, man, I'm just.
I got you.
I have the bet that I would actually make.
Yeah.
It feels like a fishy bet, but it just stands out like a sore thumb, and it feels like the sucker bet is the Saints -6.5. I thought the Saints were the best team in football, but it's the second divisional game. They just lost to Atlanta.
They struggled last week too a little bit.
I know. That's the one that stands out to me, but that clearly feels fishy. I mean, the other obvious one is, bet the Bears. They're going to this terrible backup quarterback. I don't know.
God, I hate the Bears.
I feel like that's square takes.
Well, I don't think taking road favorites is all that fishy anymore. I think that actually the public loves home underdogs. It's reversed from what it used to be. People think that home underdogs are just like, especially in prime time, they think it's just like free money. I'm not sure it's that fishy. I kind of like that.
There's no way the public is
not good.
I think that's right. I think the public's going to have to be on the Saints, right? I mean,
maybe the Falcons game, I agree with you, but there's no way the public is on the Lions tomorrow. Not with that dude at quarterback. You got one for us, Wilson? I know you got one.
Well, you know what? I really don't like you forcing me to pick games when, there's not an actual good play involved. I will say this, for this weekend, on my first run through the slate, I thought that a really good play looked like San Diego Chargers. I think they get back Garland this weekend. Is that his name?
I'm the worst person to ask about stuff like that because I freaking don't know.
Peter, do you know that? Don't they have that safety or
he's not even sitting at his desk right now. He walked away for a minute.
Okay, well,
he's literally got his shirt off right now, getting ready to go to dinner. I see him with his shirt off.
Well,
he might be thinking about Tavon Austin right now with his shirt off.
About to say, I'm getting a little aroused just thinking about that.
Perfect way to end the pod. Ashley's literally going to kill me.
We told him it was going to be a half hour, and we've been on for an hour and a half.
She's reminded
Peter, is the Chargers safety back this week?
Yeah, he is. I really like him.
Okay, I was just saying, I thought the best play of the week from what I saw early was the Chargers. I don't know, they were -1 or 2 or something like that. I think that's the best play of the week. I think if I just the one thing that stuck out to me, if I had to bet something on Thursday's slate, and I will preface this by saying I'm not a Cowboys fan. I'm a Mavericks fan. I do live in Dallas. But I do think the Cowboys, make sense this week. I think the Chargers, the Bills are a little bit fraudulent at 8-3. And I don't know. The Cowboys just, to me, when you start looking at all the yards per play stuff, which I know Jason Garrett has a way of sort of interfering with that process. And
that's exactly right.
But just on a yards per play basis, comparing them with Buffalo, looking at, and looking at the strength of schedule and all that, for me, it's more like the Cowboys -8 or 9 instead of 6.5. I don't think they can get the line up there just because it's a big game and they don't want to cross 7 and all that. So I think it's a very small edge, but I do think the Cowboys, just by the numbers, I think is small. But man, Jason Garrett, he's really tough. I don't like how he never gets your team an extra possession at the end of the half. He doesn't use his timeouts correctly. He doesn't go for it when you're supposed to. If you give up 4 or 5% probabilities of winning the game 2 or 3 times every game, it's just really, it gets to be frustrating.
That's so well said. Wilson, did you see him when he got asked all those analytics questions? Because obviously kicking the field goal there was just egregious, and he does that all the time. So
what did he say?
Oh, he had the guy brought up the exact thing, the Ravens are doing this, and he didn't even reference Ravens. There's obviously all the articles, but the guy asked a very educated question, you gave up a lot of, winning percentage by kicking that field goal, and what do you think about analytics? And he's like, it doesn't work for our team. And then made another just very blanket statement and tried to change the subject.
When it doesn't work, what do you mean? It's not even, it works for every team by making the best decision.
Of course.
I don't get that.
I'm butchering the quote slightly, but he deflected massively and used generic, oh, that's not how we do things or whatever. It was just idiocy because he got asked very pointed, educated questions.
Yeah. So just as because the Cowboys are on here every week, we get every game. And my son is a huge fan. I end up watching him, and the way he uses timeouts just kills me. And then when he punts the ball on 4th and 1 at the 50-yard line and stuff, I don't know if every coach is doing that because I don't watch as much football as I do basketball or baseball, but it just drives me insane.
Yeah,
I don't even have the numbers in front of me. I can just tell you it's wrong,
Yeah, he's bad. They're so talented too. Is the worst part about the whole situation.
They feel like they should be a top 5 talented team in the league to me.
Easily, right? If you just look strictly at talent, they're right there with anybody.
Peter, you were all over them wasting all that money on Zeke, and man, if they had all that money back right now for next year,
and Dak and Amari, it's so insane. I love the team. I think it's sharp. I think you look at the Bills, their wins are against bad teams. They've done badly against good teams.
Wilson, this guy has a different shirt on now. He's had 3 different shirts on in the last 2 minutes.
They're on the wrong shirt. Ashley said, she heard, because it's not on live, she said, they're laughing. They never had my wrath. She's full tilt.
Can you just see Pete walking into the den and Ashley just being turn around? That doesn't work. No, sir. No, sir.
She said full tilt. She opened the door.
Oh, you hurt me right now.
Oh, I'm done.
Time to go.
She's hanging.
No, I heard it. We got it on there. Time to go.
Yeah.
All righty, boys. It was fun. And Wilson, thanks. Pete, thanks. I think we gave some good insight, too, so hopefully the people liked it. Take what you want. I'm sure people will still bitch about some stuff, but I feel like we got pretty good clarification out there. Thanks, boys. It was fun.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Have a good one. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone else.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. That was honestly awesome, and good luck tomorrow, boys.
Thanks,
all right,
boys.
see you guys. Bye.
All right, as always, like I said, we're on our own feed over on iTunes, over on the Google Store. If you like this podcast, again, Print Factory Podcast, give us a subscribe, write a review on there. We're going to do some contest soon, too, where if you send a picture subscribing and review, we're going to give out some gear and some other stuff, maybe do a contest. But we try to do our best. It would help us out a ton over on Sharpside, over on RotoGrinders. just to see how many people are listening and liking what we're doing. So give us a subscribe, a like over on iTunes, Google Store. Thanks again for listening. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Let's have a good day tomorrow and a good weekend. Should be back later this week with the normal pod, but good luck to everyone.